April 1942. 0215 hours. The North Atlantic is a black, heaving desert, where cold water crushes the lungs in seconds and darkness hides death beneath every wave. A convoy of 36 merchant ships claws westward toward Britain, engines straining, decks iced over, crews exhausted beyond fear. Their cargo is everything a nation needs to survive: grain, fuel, vehicles, ammunition, medical supplies. Every ship lost means empty shelves, grounded aircraft, cold homes, and hungry civilians. Somewhere below the surface, German U-boats move silently, patient and precise. They do not rush. They stalk. The men commanding these submarines understand something terrifyingly simple. Britain is an island that cannot feed itself. Sink the ships, and the war ends without an invasion. On the bridge of a small British escort vessel, a destroyer escort armed with outdated weapons and exhausted sailors, a commander grips his binoculars and wonders the same thing countless officers have asked before him: how long can this last before we lose? By 1942, the Battle of the Atlantic has become a slow-motion strangulation. German submarines are sinking Allied shipping faster than replacements can be built. The numbers are merciless. In 1941 alone, more than 4 million tons of Allied shipping vanished beneath the waves. Merchant sailors die anonymously, without medals or headlines, swallowed by the ocean in the dark. British anti-submarine weapons exist, but they rarely kill. Depth charges thunder uselessly behind destroyers, exploding where submarines once were, not where they are. The official success rate hovers below 5%. Yet the Admiralty insists the system works. Doctrine says the problem is execution, not design. Train harder. Follow procedures. Trust the system. But for the men at sea, doctrine feels like superstition dressed as science. Every missed attack feels personal. Every burning freighter feels like proof that something fundamental is wrong. The Royal Navy's anti-submarine strategy is built on assumptions carried over from the First World War. Submarines are expected to behave predictably, to move in straight lines, to dive slowly, to panic under pressure. But German U-boats in this war are different. They are faster, deeper diving, commanded by veterans who treat evasion as an art. When sonar contact is detected, a destroyer charges forward at full speed, losing sonar contact in the final seconds before the attack. Depth charges are dropped based on where the submarine used to be, not where it is now. In those blind seconds, the U-boat turns, dives, accelerates, and escapes. The ocean absorbs the explosions. The submarine survives. And somewhere, another merchant ship dies. Within the Admiralty, this failure is explained away with charts and averages. A 3% kill rate, they argue, is acceptable given the limitations of technology. Improvements will come later, with new weapons still on the drawing board. Committees are formed. Reports are written. Nothing changes at sea. But among the escort commanders, among the men who hear the explosions and then hear nothing at all, doubt grows. One officer in particular begins to see patterns where others see chaos. He is not an admiral. He does not work in a laboratory. He has no authority to change anything. What he has is experience, mathematics, and an inability to accept that failure is inevitable. This officer begins doing something rare in wartime navies: he studies failure in detail. After every attack, he gathers sonar operators, gunners, engineers. He asks questions no one else asks. When exactly was contact lost? How fast was the ship moving? How long before the charges detonated? How deep could a submarine dive in that time? His cabin fills with notebooks, calculations scribbled between coffee stains and sleep deprivation. Slowly, a realization forms. The problem is not courage, or training, or even technology. The problem is timing. The Royal Navy is attacking where submarines are no longer present. Depth charges are exploding too deep, too late, missing the most vulnerable moment of a U-boat's dive. German submarines do not teleport. They move through the water column, passing through shallow depths before reaching safety. And in those first moments, those first 30 seconds, they are vulnerable. Their hulls strain. Their dive angles are steep. Their maneuverability is limited. Yet British depth charges are set to explode far below this zone, based on outdated assumptions. The officer runs the numbers again and again. The math does not lie. If depth charges were set shallower, staggered across multiple depths instead of uniform patterns, they could create a vertical wall of destruction. Not a guess. Not a gamble. A calculated interception of a submarine's escape path. When he submits his findings, the response is swift and cold. Rejected. Unauthorized. Dangerous. Doctrine cannot be adjusted by individual officers. Uniformity is essential, the Admiralty insists. To allow experimentation is to invite chaos. But what the paperwork cannot capture is the reality at sea. Every convoy lost is proof that chaos already reigns beneath the waves. Eventually, through quiet conversations and unofficial channels, his ideas reach someone willing to listen. A commander involved in tactical analysis runs simulations, not theoretical exercises, but realistic recreations of actual attacks. The results are startling. The modified depth charge approach more than doubles the probability of a kill. In some scenarios, it triples it. Still, permission is not granted openly. Instead, a loophole appears. Escort commanders are quietly told they may exercise discretion in combat situations. The officer understands what this means. Try it. If it works, it will be adopted. If it fails, you will be blamed. He wastes no time. On his next patrol, he orders depth charges set shallow, some at 50 feet, some at 100, some deeper. The attack unfolds like every other. Sonar contact, acceleration, loss of contact, release. But this time, something different happens. The explosions feel closer. The water shudders differently. Moments later, oil rises to the surface. Debris follows. Not proof of a kill, but proof of damage. Proof that the submarine felt the blast. The next encounters are clearer. A damaged U-boat is forced to surface, crew scrambling out as water floods the hull. Another is caught mid-dive, pressure hull fractured beyond repair. The method works. And then, in a single night, during a brutal convoy battle in the North Atlantic, two of Germany's most successful submarine commanders are lost, one forced to surrender after catastrophic flooding, the other killed when his boat surfaces unexpectedly and is rammed by an escort. The shockwaves reach Berlin and London alike. The message is unmistakable. The hunters have learned. From that moment, everything begins to change. Escort commanders adopt the new depth charge settings. Attacks become coordinated. One ship maintains sonar contact while another maneuvers for the kill. Submarines find their old escape tricks useless. Diving deep no longer guarantees safety. Staying shallow invites destruction. German war diaries begin to mention new British tactics with growing alarm. U-boat commanders are ordered to remain silent, to dive deeper, to disengage more often. Their offensive power declines. Convoys begin arriving intact. Losses do not disappear, but the balance shifts. By 1943, the effect is undeniable. Kill rates have doubled, then doubled again. What once felt like blind hope now feels like control. The Atlantic does not become safe, but it becomes survivable. The officer who began this quiet revolution refines his methods relentlessly, developing coordinated attacks that trap submarines rather than chase them. His crews trust him because his ideas bring results, and results mean coming home alive. Sailors begin referring to the tactics simply as his way. Not officially. Not in manuals. But in whispered confidence passed between ships. The personal cost is immense. The officer drives himself beyond exhaustion, spending months at sea without rest, carrying the weight of every convoy on his shoulders. When he finally collapses and dies before the war ends, he does so without high rank or political favor. The Navy uses his methods, teaches them, builds future doctrine around them, but never fully forgives him for proving the system wrong. Yet history is not written only in promotions and titles. It is written in empty bunks that remain empty, and in sailors who live to see home again. By war's end, hundreds of submarines have been destroyed using principles born from those early notebooks and forbidden calculations. Tens of thousands of merchant sailors survive because someone dared to question the obvious and trust the math over tradition. Modern anti-submarine warfare, multi-layered attacks, coordinated tracking, variable depth weapons, still follows the logic first proven in the freezing Atlantic. The lesson endures beyond naval history. Innovation does not always come from authority. Sometimes it comes from the person closest to the problem, the one who refuses to accept that failure is normal. The North Atlantic keeps its secrets well. Thousands of ships still rest on its floor, steel graves beneath shifting currents. But among them are fewer wrecks than there might have been, because one officer chose to challenge doctrine instead of obeying it blindly. He never sought recognition. He sought results. And because of that, Britain endured, the convoys sailed, and history turned, not in a boardroom or a laboratory, but on the dark, violent surface of the sea.